Picture a dark runway at night. Rain is falling, flashing warning lights are reflecting off the tarmac, and sitting there, right in the shadows, is the silhouette of a Boeing 737 MAX. Now, this is an aircraft that was engineered to absolutely protect Boeing's dominance in one of the most fiercely competitive markets on Earth. It was supposed to be this ultimate triumph of efficiency and profitability, but instead, it ended up grounded. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to unpack one of the most profound and honestly devastating corporate crises in modern aviation history. We are looking at exactly how high-stakes corporate rivalry, hidden complexity, and a massive failure in leadership accountability collided with catastrophic results. You see, this wasn't just a plane. It was a massive strategic asset that somehow morphed into the center of a profound governance and safety crisis. There's a quote that really hits the nail on the head here. A product built for strategic advantage became a symbol of accountability failure. Because, when a massive engineering marvel like this fails, it's rarely just a simple technical glitch. It's a fundamental breakdown in accountability.
Part 1. The Race Against Airbus.
So the tension here was just absolutely palpable. On one side, Boeing was facing this incredibly fierce competition from the highly fuel-efficient Airbus A320neo. And airlines, well, they were demanding that exact same efficiency and lower operating costs from Boeing. But crucially, and this is a big deal, they wanted minimal pilot training disruption. Basically, they wanted new planes that felt exactly like the old planes. So Boeing had a tough choice. Do they spend a decade building an entirely new plane from the ground up? Or do they just rapidly update their tried-and-true 737 platform to protect their market share? Well, they went with the faster update. And strategically, sure, it made perfect sense. But man, it created immense pressure. And that brings us to the absolute moral anchor of our story today. In aviation, speed and commercial pressure must never outrun safety. It's not just a guideline, it is a fundamental law of the industry. The very moment strategic tension pushes speed ahead of caution, the whole foundation starts to crack.
Part 2. Hidden Complexity and Tragedy.
Okay, so to update the 737 with these new, larger, more efficient engines, Boeing actually had to physically place those engines further forward on the wings. Now, doing that physically changed the aerodynamics of the plane, which made the nose pitch up under certain flight conditions. So to fix a physical hardware problem, they came up with a software solution. Enter MCAS. That stands for the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System. It was designed to automatically push the plane's nose back down and just sort of adjust the handling in the background. Think about the stark contrast there for a second. You've got this massive, multi-ton physical aircraft being entirely dictated by tiny strings of hidden software code. And this hidden complexity, it very quickly became a fatal vulnerability through this really dangerous domino effect. First off, a design decision was made to keep MCAS largely in the background, specifically to avoid triggering any new training requirements for the pilots. Second, because it was hidden, when the software actually kicked in, it radically affected the pilots' workload without them even fully understanding why. Third, this incredibly powerful system relied on just a single sensor input to alter the entire aircraft's behavior. And finally, a massive communication gap meant pilots totally lacked the safety net of knowledge. So these technical choices basically morphed into a fatal gap in systemic oversight. Those decisions led to some truly devastating real-world consequences. In October of 2018, Lion Air Flight 610 crashed into the Java Sea. And then, just months later, in March 2019, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 crashed shortly after takeoff. This sequence of events is not just some corporate timeline, right? It is a tragic succession of systemic failures that ultimately forced the FAA to ground the entire aircraft fleet worldwide until late 2020. 346. That is the number of people, passengers, crew members, entire families who lost their lives. Every single strategic lesson we discuss today has to begin and end with the incredible weight of this human cost. Part 3. Grounded. The reputational collapse. The fallout from this was immediate, and it was absolutely staggering. As aviation authorities globally grounded the 737 MAX fleet, this cascading crisis just slammed into Boeing. The compounding consequences were immense. Deliveries stopped overnight, global airline schedules were just thrown into complete chaos, and massive production lines literally ground to a halt, creating this intense financial pressure. But, while the financial hit was measured in the billions of dollars, the absolute most critical damage was a catastrophic loss of public confidence. Boeing had built its entire identity on engineering excellence and trust. So when those planes were grounded, that foundational trust was just shattered. Part 4.
leadership and safety culture.
I want you to consider the culture inside your own organization right now. Seriously, are you guys in a healthy state or are you in a vulnerable one? Look, in a healthy state, employees can freely challenge deadlines. In a vulnerable state, delivering on time is rewarded way over caution. Healthy cultures allow engineers to escalate their concerns freely, but vulnerable ones silence those uncomfortable truths. And healthy governance requires the strict verification of risk, while vulnerable governance just relies on trust without any verification. The Boeing crisis really exposed a fatal shift from that healthy column straight into the vulnerable one. And this shift is fatal because in aviation, leadership absolutely demands an uncompromising hierarchy. Step 1, safety first. Step 2, reputation. And then step 3, commercial performance. If an organization reverses this order, if speed and market share are somehow prioritized over safety discipline, well, the entire pyramid becomes incredibly vulnerable to collapse. Part 5. Rebuilding trust and accountability. So the recovery for this went far beyond just, writing a quick software patch for MCAS. The FAA demanded comprehensive design changes. Pilot training, which Boeing had so desperately tried to avoid in that initial design phase, became strictly mandatory. Worldwide regulators fundamentally strengthened their own oversight, and the U.S. Department of Justice pursued long-term legal accountability. The ultimate takeaway here? Strategic recovery is agonizingly difficult because you aren't just fixing a broken product, you are repairing belief. So let's distill all of this down. If you take away absolutely anything from our explainer today, it really should be these 5 vital lessons. Number 1, commercial urgency must never override safety discipline. 2, technical complexity cannot be hidden, it's got to be communicated clearly. 3, leadership accountability matters most before disaster happens, not just during the cleanup. 4, a true safety culture empowers challenge and actively fights silence. And number 5, strategic recovery requires concrete evidence, not just corporate promises. Organizations fail when their internal systems allow risk to become totally invisible. Ultimately, the whole thing really just comes down to this core takeaway. In high-risk industries, strategy must be built around safety, not balanced against it. You literally cannot weigh safety on a scale against cost and speed. Safety is the very foundation that allows the strategy to exist at all. Reputation isn't just about market share, right? Reputation is trust. Let me leave you with this final provocative thought to linger on. When trust falls from the sky, recovery takes years. I want you to look at the systems, the culture, and the pressures within your own world. Is your strategy truly built around safety and integrity, or is it secretly being balanced against it? Because as we've seen today, accountability is really the only true path forward. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking the tough questions, and I'll see you